Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Pradhan, Senior Marketing Campaigns Manager for Camion, and welcome to our webinar, 5 Ways to Use ELDs to Increase Profits with John Seidl, a nationally known DOT and Fmcsa expert and CEO of Trucking Wins. Now, I know I called this 5 Ways to Use ELDs and Increase Profits, but actually this is much more of a discussion. I'm sure we'll get through much more than just 5 different ways, but feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature, and we'll be sure to ask John those questions as we get to them. So, John, there you
Hello,
are.
how are you, Rachel?
Great, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm sitting here in sunny Florida, and we're doing a DOT seminar tomorrow, so we're excited. We got about 30 companies coming.
Now, we're all very excited to talk about ELDs and hours of service and how they can actually help improve profitability for fleets. And normally it's at this time that I would introduce you, but I've heard you do self-introductions and you're much better at it than I am. So if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, so hello, everybody. My name is John Seidl. I used to be a state patrol inspector for 12 years. So any drivers out there, if I ever pulled you over, I'm sorry. And then I used to be an investigator with Fmcsa. So I knocked on company doors and I did full reviews of their operation, issued bad ratings, fines, and penalties. Then I was a hazmat guy with the FAA. I actually investigated hazardous material on airplanes. So 20 years later, now I'm a truck insurance agent and I'm a DOT consultant. So I'm here just to try to help everybody navigate the ELDs and the hours of service and try to improve basically profits, revenue, and control expenses.
Great. And of course that Trucking Wins, you do a lot more than just that, but that's where we're going to focus today. So we have a couple of questions to get us started. And like I said, as we're going through, any of you want to ask more detailed questions for John, just use the Q&A button there. So we'll start with, how do ELDs help a driver understand the split sleeper berth to increase revenue?
Well, I'll tell you, split sleeper's been around forever in different forms or fashions. But the way we have it right now, it's misunderstood. People don't understand how to calculate it. And I'll start with an example. About, I don't know, a week ago, I had one of my customers, driver, his name was Ozzy. He got delayed at a shipper receiver for 4 hours. He didn't anticipate that. Then he finally got loaded and he had a delivery. Well, he figured out his hours and he's like, well, now I can't make my delivery because I was delayed. He called me on the phone. He goes, John, I know you've been teaching us split sleeper. What do I do? And I said, okay, how many hours did you drive before the 4 hours? And he told me. Then I told him how many hours he has left to drive. Then I told him to take 7 hours in the sleeper, add it to the 4 he already took. That got some extra time back so he could call the shipper and say, listen, I can make the delivery. I will be on time. One caveat to that also is he would have been home late had he had to take a full 10-hour break instead of the 7 and the 4. He ended up making it home on time for his little newborn baby. So it made me feel good that a simple phone call with a little bit of education helped him out. And you know, it's funny what he told me. He goes, John, you know how many times I've spent the night for 10 hours at a truck stop? Only to find out now that if I'd have just turned my ELD on, I would have got all these hours back and I would have kept trucking. Now I got scenario after scenario that we could, talk about a couple more now or move on with another question where drivers can just use this to their advantage. Well,
why don't you share another example?
All right, so and here at Trucking Wins, which is where I work and a company that I co-founded, I have a 47-minute split sleeper video with a bunch of scenarios. But here's one as an example. Let's say me and you are both in New York City and we both pick up a load and we're both going to Los Angeles over the course of 4 days. if you don't know how to split your sleeper, you need a 30-minute break, then a 10-hour break, then a 30-minute break, then a 10-hour break. It's pretty standard.
Mhm.
Well, I know how to split. So what I'll do is I'll take a 2 or 3 hour break, add it to 7 or 8. So I'm only taking 10 hours off, where you, Rachel, you're taking 10 and a half every day. So over 4 days from New York to Los Angeles, I will get there 2 hours earlier than you. And last time I checked, time is money. And if we can use the split sleeper to run more efficiently, customer service, get home on time, run more efficient so our tires keep us spinning,
Mhm.
customer satisfaction. You know how mad that customer would have been if Ozzy didn't make it there on time? And you know how happy the customer's going to be with me when I get there 2 hours before you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So
Well,
that's another example. And then another one that I did on Road Dog Radio. I talk on Road Dog Radio a lot. There was a guy that did a quick turn. Quick turns like where you leave one day, have to spend a 10-hour break and come back, right? So he had to drive for 7 hours, if there's any drivers tracking, drive for 7. Then he basically unload for an hour, and then he drove for 4 and hit his 11. Well, then he would historically take a 10-hour break, and then the hour he was loading, that would be 11 every time he went and turned around and came back. I told him, I said, stop it. That hour break you took, turn it into 2, then hit your 11, then do 8 in the sleeper. It will grab the 2, and you're going to get home an hour earlier twice a week. So he goes, that's crazy. And I said, yeah. Now, an hour earlier twice a week, 50 weeks a year, that conversation over the radio saved this driver over 100 hours of home time. So recruiting and retention, how important is that? Just a few
Absolutely.
examples of split sleeper and how it can help you.
That's a great answer. Couple of questions came in. One is this being recorded? Yes, it is absolutely being recorded. And we will send out the link to this probably tomorrow morning. The other question was, where can we find out more about John's company? You can find it at truckingwins.com.
Yeah.
So do insurance, you told me a little bit yesterday as we were chatting before this about insurance companies using ELD data as a tool to decrease insurance rates. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I had mentioned a guy named Tommy Rook with the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. He started the MCIEF to educate insurance agents and insurance markets in the trucking industry. He's done a great job. And about, I would say 2-3 weeks ago, he sat me on a panel with a potential new insurance market. And he said, John, they want to know more about ELDs. They want to know how they can use the ELD data to better analyze companies and give them good or bad rates. And they want to basically track mileage through the ELDs, track performance through the ELDs, and decide how they're going to structure their insurance program to give companies benefits in order to integrate their insurance premiums and quotes with the data coming from the ELD. Interesting, it's just like Camion. Camion has relationships with 5 or 6 ELD vendors. You guys integrate with their device to help in dispatching. So then customers can track the vehicles. It's all about improving efficiencies. So you guys have done the same thing that this insurance company wants to do. You do it to increase revenues and efficiencies and downtime to get the job done. They do it to assess risk to determine how much to charge. Funny is they're not the only ones. That's a panel of one company that I'm aware of that wants to start. Too bad they're not first to the game. There are other companies. Now, I can't speak about their names on here because I'm an insurance agent and a DOT guy at Trucking Wins. So, but I have one market in particular I'm in Clearwater Beach, Florida, doing a seminar. She's coming tomorrow. They take the analytics data from the ELD. If you want a quote from them, you got to turn over the raw data to them. They will analyze speeding and hard braking and unsafe maneuvers and determine whether you're a safe company, and it garners a better rate. Very interesting, right?
Very interesting.
Another insurance company will actually take your ELD login, monitor your hours of service, providing you reports. If you have drivers falsifying, they may cancel your insurance. But if you have drivers running really good logs, they actually give you better rates. The funny part is, I've given quotes to trucking companies where the rate is better by turning over your ELD data, and they don't want to. They'd rather pay more money than turn over their logs and their ELD raw data. Why do you suppose that is?
Maybe a little bit worried about what it's going to show.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess an insurance program where they take raw data and ELD data isn't good for everybody, for sure.
True. But it is good to know how things are going in your fleet, because certainly if you know that drivers are not driving as well as they could be, that it's actually hurting your fleet and your profits as well with maintenance costs, insurance costs, and such.
And 100%. And knowing that some customers are willing to share their ELD data with Camion and their fuel data, those are the kind of quality customers we want to work with, right? Not saying we wouldn't work. If you're not willing to just at least be a little transparent with your customers and shippers, receivers, it questions whether or not you basically have the safety culture necessary to improve in the first place.
True.
Yeah.
Another question here. What are some of the common mistakes fleets make in managing ELD compliance as it relates to like roadside inspections or Fmcsa interventions?
Well, that's a very loaded question. It's broken into two parts. So let's start with roadside, right?
Okay.
What I think's funny about your CSA score for hours of service is a lot of companies get a bunch of points, and you don't want points in your CSA. They get a bunch of points because of four things. They don't have a user manual for their ELD. They don't have an instruction card on how to handle malfunctions. They don't have an instruction card on how to transfer the data file to the officer, and they don't have a blank set of logs in case their device malfunctions. That's 4 points in your CSA. The way CSA works is they multiply it. Like most recent violations are multiplied by 3. So you get 4 points times 3. You add 12 points to your CSA score every single time drivers don't have paper. Like, come on, paper? Is having or not having these going to cause you to crash? No. You won't crash because you didn't have paper in your truck. But to get extra CSA because you're not putting pieces of paper in your truck, that's sad. Now, if you had a log that wasn't current, it's only 5 points. So you can almost get the same amount of points not having a piece of paper. Go one step further. You need a trailer number. You need a bill of lading number or some kind of rate number, and you have to put that on the header every day. You have to sign your log every day. Well, that's 1, 2, 3 points. So if you didn't have the 4 pieces of paper, you didn't sign it, you didn't put your bill of lading, you didn't put your trailer, that's 7 points. A false log is 7 points. So why would you not just do the easy things when the hard things are hard enough to control? Why are you running around without putting stuff in the header and having pieces of paper? So roadside, it seems silly to me. And there's so many companies that don't focus on those. Now, a compliance review. If you want to make it so the feds don't mess with you with your ELDs, you need to control personal conveyance. Because the number one way to falsify your log is abusing PC. Number 2, you need to make sure your drivers are logged in all the time. You can't run out hours and log off. If you do that, you're going to get busted for false logs there too. Third one, don't be using no fake co-drivers, right? You know how many companies I've come across are like, hey, John, can you do a log audit? And they got this fake driver who lives in Florida, left in Texas, jumped in a truck with another driver and then got out of the truck in Utah. Investigators aren't stupid. You can't take a driver, give him some fake login and have him just log in the middle of nowhere and have nobody question it. So PC abuse, logging off and driving, using someone else's log. Those are the three things that'll get you a false log case if they come knock on your door.
How would you say that fleet owners can make sure that their drivers are doing this every day, especially and making sure that they have the paper in their trucks and things like that?
Well, if we go with let's just go with the roadside side of it.
Mm-hmm.
They can monitor the bill of lading, the trailer number, and whether they signed it by just logging into their interface and monitoring it with a safety person within your office. It's called your safety director or a safety manager. So 3 of the points can be eliminated by just monitoring the logs that are already in your computer. The 4 documents, you actually physically need to see if they're in the truck, right? And that the driver knows how to give them to them. They can be electronic, but it doesn't help you if the driver doesn't know how to access them. So what I've made a recommendation with some of my companies is get a compliance cell phone. Put every driver's cell phone number in it and send them a message on a Monday saying, I want you to take a photo of the 3 pieces of paper, the instruction manuals, and 8 blank set of logs. You need to send it by Friday. Over the weekend, hire a little 16-year-old kid to go over all the pictures. And on Monday, you get a spreadsheet of who did or didn't send the picture. If they didn't send the picture, they don't get a load, right? So you can monitor it through photos. Now, are we tricking the drivers? No. We're basically telling them what we want a picture of. Well, guess what? If they don't have the logs, now it's an IQ test. Are they smart enough to go to a truck stop and buy them? Or are they just going to be like, I don't have them? Of course, a good driver would go get the documents he needs, then take a photo of it, you see? So there's one way. The compliance review with the false logs, it's all on the safety team. They have to know how to monitor PC, monitor unassigned driving, monitor 2 people logging into the same device, which isn't always the company doing it. Sometimes drivers will try to do that mess. You need to be trained in all of that, right? So again, where Trucking Wins comes in is we have training modules on our website. We're here to try to bring more robust details to this generic conversation we're having right now.
Perfect. Let's see. So regarding ELDs and helping with expenses, I know we're talking about profits here, but certainly reducing our expenses can increase profits too. Can you share a little bit about that?
You know, absolutely. When I talk trucking, I always ask companies, I'm like, why are you even in business? And they're like, we want to make money. Well, you need revenue. And how do you get more revenue? You use companies like Kamion so you can efficiently dispatch, take care of customer service, integrate your ELD, have the customer know when stuff's coming, integrate, you know, fuel expenses and fuel mileage and IFTA reporting, all those things. So that can increase revenue. Using PC properly. Sleeper, using the agricultural exemption. There's a lot of different ways to gain money. Now we have fuel, insurance, maintenance, and payroll. So we want to improve our efficiencies to make sure we don't spend as much in those expenses. Can the ELD help with that? Yes. First and foremost, fuel efficiency. Camion has ELDs. You have the data. Camion has your fuel card. So if you're a company out there that has the ELD that you guys work with, the fuel company you work with, you can automatically calculate fuel efficiency. So then the managers and the operations people can promote the increase of fuel efficiency.
Mhm.
How do you increase fuel? You drive less aggressively. You don't race up to traffic lights. You don't idle when you're not supposed to. You don't speed. You don't tailgate. Well, guess what? Monitoring fuel efficiency by default will help you control your maintenance, because you're going to beat up the truck less if you don't drive as aggressively. So that's a win. You're going to crash less and get less CSA violations. Oh, insurance is going to go down. So you can use this data coming from the ELD and your fuel card with a Camion or anyone else, or do it manually. But why do it manually? You're wasting time, right? You can use that to increase fuel, which helps you with maintenance. The other part with maintenance is this. If you properly use a DVIR system through an ELD, basically communicating repairs that need to be made efficiently with maintenance team members on the back end, that can help with your preventative maintenance. So now you're not getting shut down at a scale and placed out of service for some maintenance thing that you could have fixed all along, right? And then insurance, clearly. I showed you some insurance companies are using the data. If you use this data to help you control compliance, your CSA score is going to be lower and you're going to get better rates. So across the board, we can save money by working together. Surround yourself with subject matter experts like a Kamion or a Trucking Wins in the areas that aren't trucking. It frees up time so you company owners and driver can do what you do best, which is get loads, get them delivered, take care of business.
Love it.
Yeah.
Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, what are some common misunderstandings of the 11, 14, and 60, 70 hour rule set?
All right, so if I have any drivers on here, I hope you pay attention to this, because some drivers understand what I'm about to say, but some of them just don't. And I'm sad that they don't, but hey, that's why we're partnering with Camion here, to bring you a little bit of information. And if you want more, you know where to get it, right? So if you start at 6 a.m., 14 hours later, under a standard 14-hour day without using split sleeper, which is a whole nother subject, you start at 6 a.m. at 8 p.m., that's your 14-hour day. There's many drivers that think they got to shut down for 10 hours at the 14th hour. That is not true. You can work past the 14th hour. You just can't drive on a road, a highway, past the 14th hour. So here's the example. You start at 6 a.m. You get to the shipper at 8 p.m. You check in under yard move for 2 hours. Some drivers would say, I'm at 16 hours. I can't do that. Yes, you can, because you didn't drive on a highway after the 14th hour. The same thing goes, can you work Monday through Friday, 14-hour days, then come in on a Saturday, right? A Saturday, and repair your vehicle on the clock? Yes. Even though you can only do 70 hours in 8 days, and you did 14 times 5, which is 70 Monday through Friday, you can log working on your truck that weekend because it's on duty time. It's not driving. So can you work 78 hours in 6 days? Yes. You just can't drive over the 70. So the weekend you can still work on Saturday, get a restart on Sunday, start Monday with 0 hours towards your 70. So it's like a misnomer that people think they can't drive or operate over those. Now, when it comes to the 11 and the 14, you have adverse conditions, which allows you to extend your day from 11 to 13, or from 14 to 16 if you qualify for adverse conditions. Then we have your big day. It's where you can do a 16-hour day if you leave and return to the same spot for said number of days over said period of time. Basically, if you're home every night, you have an option of potentially having a 16-hour day. So everyone is so stuck on 11, 14, 60, 70, and a 30-minute break. There are exceptions out there that drivers and companies need to take advantage of. so they can make more money with the caveat of doing it safely. Don't operate ill or fatigued. But if the government says it's okay, well, then let's learn what they say is okay and let's take advantage of it as long as we do it properly. And that's the caveat with these rule sets. Everybody thinks they just shut down immediately on the side of the road at those hour sets, and it's not always the case.
What are some of the adverse conditions? What examples do you have of that?
All right, so there's a regulation that says at the time of dispatch, if some emergency adverse condition is unknown, and you would have made it to that location had that situation not happened, you can go 13 hours of driving in a 16-hour day. Here's an example. I leave at 6 a.m. I think I'm going to get there by 7 p.m., 13 hours later. Left at 6, I'll get there by 7, 13. And I'm right at about 10 and a half hours of driving. Uh-oh, I come across a crash, and it's a real bad one, and I'm stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Did I know that crash was going to happen when I was dispatched? No. Would I have made it at 13 hours and 10 and a half hours had that crash not happened? Yes. I'm now allowed to go 12 and a half hours of driving, right, up to 13, and a 16-hour day, which would be a 15-hour day in this case. I'm allowed to do that because I would have made it otherwise. But you better document that in your ELD. Put a milepost number that the crash happened. If you have a camera, save that footage, right? Your ELD pings every hour. It will show that you were actually driving very slowly given the locations over that 2-hour period. So you have things in your ELD that'll support you, but document. How many days can you use that? Every day, as long as you qualify for it. You can't lie, but as long as you qualify.
Right.
Now,
Right.
a blizzard, it's gonna be 10 inches of snow tomorrow. You knew that when you were dispatched. You can't fake the funk and say it was snowing when the media said expect 10 inches of snow. It's got to be unknown. But that's adverse conditions. Again, we have a training module on that at Trucking Mints, honestly.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're almost at the half-hour mark, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions. For our audience, feel free, if any of the questions or answers that John has given and you had like a follow-up, feel free to use the Q&A or even the chat, and I'll be sure to ask John those questions. So besides the split sleeper to increase revenues, what other HOS exemptions can increase revenue?
Well, we touched a few of them here. One that I find is very interesting is the agricultural exemption. Prior to June of 2018, the agricultural exemption could only be used when you picked up agricultural products in the field or where it was grown. Once it was transferred to a secondary storage, like a warehouse or a distribution center, or even if it's grain, right, from the farm and you put it in an elevator, which, you know, a grain elevator, it didn't qualify anymore. Well, they changed that. In June of 18 now, any secondary storage facility, as long as the agricultural has not been significantly changed and processed, it can be minimally processed, like cleaned, you know, maybe some, you know, shucked, right? But if a potato is a potato, it's a potato. If it comes from the field and goes to a warehouse and it's in bags and boxes and crated, if someone looks over there and says, oh yeah, that's a potato, well, then it still qualifies. So if you're a driver, and get me on this, we can't learn it all here. If you're a driver and you're empty and you're going to pick up a full load of straight up potatoes, when you get within 150 air mile circle of the pickup point, you're off duty that whole time. Huh?
Oh, nice.
Loading, you're off duty. If you fuel when you're in that circle, that pickup point, you're off duty. Then when you leave that circle to go across the country, the first 150 air miles, you're also off duty. What are you talking about, John? I'm empty to go pick up potatoes. I can go 3 hours approximately, hour loading, drive another hour, drive, and spend like 7 or 8 hours off duty while I'm driving around working. That's exactly what I just said, right?
Wow.
So can you use that as part of your 10-hour break? Yeah, as long as you're not ill or fatigued. Now, for the purposes of this 30 minutes, again, I got a 30-minute agricultural exemption video on trucking wins. If I went through PC, sleeper berth, adverse conditions, yard move, and all these things we can use in the information that I provide on our website, it would be 3-4 hours. So this is basically saying Trucking Wins and Camion are partnering up. You guys are trying to provide companies something that you just don't do on a regular basis. What does Camion do well? They do dispatching. They help customers operate more efficiently to increase revenues. They help with payroll. They help with mileage and reporting and IFTAs. They help in all those areas. I don't do none of that. What I do is I try to help on the compliance side. So this is a great partnership, and we're very happy to bring this to the group here.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kamion can do a lot of things, but we're not in the business of training, which is why we brought you on board, and very happy with the information that you're able to provide with our carriers.
Yep, 100%. I'm happy to be here. So this is great.
Thank you. So I don't see any questions coming in quite yet, so we have a couple more here. How can ELDs be used as a platform for training? And you've talked a little bit about compliance monitoring, but specifically training.
All right, so I'll say this. There are over 500 ELDs that are self-certified on the website that say they're an ELD, right? I'd say maybe 10 of them are any good. 12, maybe 15 at the most. A bunch of them, they meet the requirements, but they're not going to bring any advanced value add. Hence why some of these insurance markets only work with some ELDs. Hence why Camion only works with some ELDs, because quite frankly, some of the data and some of the capabilities just isn't there, and it's not good enough with these ELDs. So if anybody on this call partners themselves with a really good ELD, some of them have capability to doing webinars through the ELD, sending out safety messages, videos directly through the device. If you're with an ELD that basically is at the cutting edge of safety and performance, every day that goes, they add something else to their portfolio. I have one company out of San Diego. I don't want to say their name on here because, you know, it's not fair to everybody, but they have an open platform to their ELD. They don't monopolize the data. They let all the data in the entire platform from their ELD. They allow some IT nerd to go in and program whatever they want to push whatever they want through the ELD out to the end user. That's cutting edge. Then you get other devices, you know, which you are in this space, so you understand. They act like your data is their personal property, right? They won't open up their platform so companies can utilize this data to improve their own companies, i.e. through training, through document flow, all those other things. Like Camion, you guys have agreements with these ELDs to do document flow directly through your website and the third parties. Imagine if your third party ELD didn't even have capability to support you on that. So that's what I'm talking about. Pick the right one and you can do some crazy things with an ELD.
Absolutely. And when you have that kind of integration and flow of documentation within Camion, invoicing becomes super easy. You can see all the documents right there, all the mileage, everything. So you can just click a couple buttons and invoice the customer very easily.
You know, and even with this webinar, right? We had more people register for this webinar than are on the webinar. Why is that? Because truckers are so busy. They have all these good intentions to jump on a webinar and learn as much as possible. It's just that their time constraints make it impossible. So what you need to do is you need to surround yourself with anything you can do that takes some of these manual processes and eliminates them. Get rid of them. So partner with good ELD companies, good compliance guys, good dispatching software, good vendors, and it'll free up time for your safety department to do what they do best, for your dispatchers to do what they do best, and for your company to grow without all these nonsensical manual processes that aren't even necessary in today's age.
Right. And especially when they're really small, like they're just getting started, under 5 trucks, they may not have a safety director or manager, and they're trying to do everything themselves. Having these automated processes makes life a lot easier. Yeah.
And if you do it right from the beginning, it becomes normal. You don't do it manually and then have to break that monotony to do something different. Start with your operation as efficient as possible from day one, and you won't even know any different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can a good ELD IFTA platform improve efficiencies for a company? So you talked a little bit about fuel efficiency and things like that. Is there more to that?
Well, if you think about it, back in the paper log days, every driver needed to write down when they crossed a state line on a trip sheet. They had to have the odometer readings of every time they crossed. You had to take your fuel and you had to manually enter it in and calculate it for each of those locations. So the IFTA audit didn't end up sinking your ship. So now when we move to ELDs, some ELDs are good at IFTA. Quite frankly, some of them just are not good at IFTA, right? So ultimately, surround yourself with a good ELD and a good third party that can help report your IFTAs, and it's going to free up all that time for the driver. So in the middle of him arriving and departing, he doesn't have to stop and fill out another piece of paper trying to remember when he crossed what state line at what mileage amount. And then is it even accurate? Who knows? So eliminate those manual processes. How do you do that? Like I said, find yourself a really good ELD that integrates with somebody who can do your IFTA reporting. And that is one way to free up driver time and company management time. What happens when you do that for a driver? He's happy, and happy drivers stay. He also can recruit his buddies and say, you do that IFTA on a piece of paper still? I don't. I just have it built into my system. I barely got to do anything. Plus, my company promotes personal conveyance and split sleeper and the agricultural exemption because they're knowledgeable about them. Now, recruiting and retention is a lot easier because you're using these things as an advantage to your company to make the driver's life a lot better. They're hard workers. We should take that into consideration.
Definitely. An audience question is, what is the best way to use your ELD for PM reminders?
It all depends on the vendor. Now, your preventative maintenance schedule, the regulations for a maintenance file say that you have to have a preventative maintenance schedule as outlined by the manufacturer in your maintenance file. So if you have your maintenance file electronically tied to the ELD vendor, then as you put suspense dates in your required maintenance file for a preventative maintenance schedule, it will prompt through your maintenance file to the ELD to give you reminders. But you would need some kind of system that's tied to an ELD. Again, that open platform could provide that. Now, a small company would have to buy that third party, but a larger company could develop that IT in-house on their own.
Very good. There was a question here about ELDs pulling in fuel card data as well as to track state mileage to do IFTA reporting. Now, I don't think it does both, but like with a truck management system like Camion, it can actually pull in the fuel card data and the ELD data, and that's where you get those IFTA reports automatically being produced. So you have to have a third-party system that can take in both data points in order to make that happen.
You know what I would say? There's over 500 vendors in the United States. And I said only a couple of them are good. I can think of like 3 vendors off the top of my head that actually allow you to integrate the fuel card into the ELD and do the same kind of thing. But if you don't want to pay extra for that, they won't do it. So it's an add-on for those 3 vendors. So like you said, if you have your ELD vendor and over here you got the fuel card data and both of them work with Camion, Camion takes them, overlaps them, and assists with your fuel reporting. So you don't have to change the ELD vendor to one of those 2 or 3 that support it and pay an extra fee on top of it. You guys, what I'm say, likely included in your entire package.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no added cost to any of our services. So
Mm-hmm.
here to help as much as we can. When it comes to completing paperwork can be really time consuming. How can an ELD help with that?
Yeah. And the same thing goes with, you'd have to have a scanner in the truck, right? But if you could take a photo, and there are some ELDs that do this, if you could take a photo of the document, nice clear picture, or you could have a scanner in the vehicle and scan the document. You can push it through the ELD electronically through the connection with the company and flow the data directly to the company with a proper ELD. But if you don't have the proper ELD to do that, it just won't support it there. Then you'd have to have a third-party entity that is not tied to your ELD to take the picture, scan it in, and throw it through. And you guys know, I don't, like I said, I'm not talking names other than Trucking Wins and Camion today, but there's some truck stops around the country that have well-known third-party entities, and all they do is flow data. What you want to do is find a one-stop shop for all of it. And I think that's where Camion kind of got their foothold, is everybody was sick of having all this a la carte everywhere. Why don't we just put all the needs of a company into one platform so we can support it in one spot? Why is Camion good in my opinion? Because a trucking owner started it.
Right.
Right.
They saw what they needed and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to build this myself. So
Yep,
that's what they
100%.
did.
Yep.
Another question is from an owner operator with 1 truck. He said he's made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, starting their business, and wants to be able to lower their safety score faster now that they're compliant. So how can they do that?
All right. So here's the problem. CSA scores stay in your system for 2 years. So if you started up and your first 2 years weren't very good, and then you finally learned how to be a proper company, you have to weather the storm to get rid of that 2 years. So it happens in a periodic way. I told you, if you get a violation today for, say, not wearing your seatbelt, that would be 7 points in your unsafe CSA. They multiply that 7 times 3 and they give you 21 points, Rachel, right? Then when that violation is 6 months to 12 months old, it's 7 times 2, which is 14. Then when the violation's a year old, it's 7 times 1, which is 7. 2 years later, it falls off. So if you can go 6 months with nothing, you're going to see some benefit because no violations will be multiplied by 3. All the 3s will turn into 2s, all the 2s will turn into 1s, and half of those will fall off, right? So time. Now, some people are like, I don't have time, right? My insurance renewal is coming up. Right. Second one, data queues. Data queues is where you challenge any state and their roadside because you think they were wrong. Do I do data queues all the time? Yes. Do I win them all the time? Yes. I win them off of merit. There's a lot of people that think a warning can't be challenged. That is not true. Example, I just had one 2 days ago. We got written up for a spare fuse missing. Believe it or not, it's a regulation.
Hmm.
FMCSA came up with an interpretation that said on the inspection, if you do not annotate which specific fuse was missing and what item it supported, then you can't write it up. So any roadside that says spare fuses and there's not a note explaining what fuse is missing for what component, can't write it up. Now get this one. Let's say they did know this fuse supported the horn, which is a required item, but the same fuse is in the radio. The radio is not required. So the fuse in the radio is a spare fuse for the horn. You get it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how impossible is it for an inspector to write fuse is missing? It's impossible, but they still do it. So you data queue it. Another data queue is citations. If you get a ticket dismissed or reduced, you can data queue it and lessen the effect. Another one is crash preventability. If you have crashes that don't qualify under the DOT, you can challenge them. Or if you have crashes that meet certain criteria and they're not your fault, you can challenge them also, and they're gone away from your score. So I would say your CSA is very similar to cargo claims, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want with a cargo claim? We don't want one. We don't want to have a cargo claim. Well, we don't want violations in your CSA. Once you have a cargo claim, you want to manage that cargo claim to reduce the effect. Well, that's called a data queue. Some cargo claims, though, it is what it is. You rolled the truck over, you lost the whole load, it ended up in a ditch full of dirt, right? You're out of luck. Well, some CSA violations, honestly, you're just out of luck. Good thing is CSA disappears in 2 years. Crash losses, 5 years, they stay on your loss run, affecting your insurance. So at least weathering the storm with CSA is only 2 instead of 5 for losses and crashes, right?
True.
Yep.
Well, and our next webinar that we're going to have in April together is talking about what to do when you receive a compliance letter.
Yep.
So I hope that all of you will join us for that one. It could be very beneficial, especially if you've had issues with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you, a lot of people don't really understand what triggers a review. We're going to talk about on that webinar what to do to protect yourself against a review, how to handle it once it's happening. If it's got adverse effects, how to make it so that doesn't hurt your company so much. An example, let's say you get a conditional rating proposed. What do you do to try to fix that so it doesn't affect your bottom line? But here's the thing, what do you think triggers a review? It's only a few things. High CSA scores, they'll come visit you. Number 2, any high profile fatality. I didn't say every fatality, only if it's high profile and they feel like it. Have there been fatalities where they don't come knock on your door? Absolutely yes, right? So fatality that's high profile, high CSA scores. Someone complains against your company. That'll prompt a review. And the last one is this. Every driver with a driver's license number has a CSA score tied to him. It's not open to the public though, but the feds have it. They know exactly what you've done over the years attached to your driver's license number. The only way to hide is to change your driver's license number to another state, because then they're not tracking it, right? It's a loophole. But anyway, the feds will take a bad driver with a bad license and a bunch of violations, and they'll go visit the last place he was inspected at. So if you're a trucking company that hires a crappy driver, you might end up getting a visit from the feds, even with good CSA, no fatalities, no complaints, because you hired that one guy that wasn't worth it. They may come knock on your door and say, why, right? So I'm excited about this webinar come a couple months from now, where we can actually talk about these reviews. I just mentioned the reasons they come. So don't do the things I just said. But ultimately, there's plenty of companies that will continue to do it. I guess it keeps me employed quasi, but we'll get them educated so they don't have any surprises and they can sleep like a baby.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, John, for your insightful answers, as always, on how trucking companies can utilize ELDs and hours of service to improve profitability.
Yeah.
We will have this recording available to everyone that attended, as well as anyone that just registered and was not able to attend because they were too busy managing their trucking business. And I am going to share my screen just for a second here so that you guys can see the trucking wins information here. Like I mentioned, you can go to truckingwins.com. They have lots of great online video training, live Ask Me Anything sessions. Anything else you want to add, John?
I'd say this, because I'm a consultant and I sell truck insurance, you can reach out to me on either one of those, but I felt like I had so many drivers and safety directors and company officials that needed more information. And there's no college degree for DOT. You can go to college and get a degree in insurance. You can go to college and get a degree in logistics or OSHA, but there isn't any DOT compliance degrees. So to me, where do you find the answers? And I want to help as many people as possible. I want to get this message out. I don't want Ozzy to be the only one that can call me at night and help him get his load delivered and get home on time to his kid, you see? So I take pride, and so does my partner, in developing Trucking Wins as an online video training that will basically have answers to all DOT compliance that it is out there, right? It's still in development. You know, we're adding videos every day, so be patient with us. Once a month, I do a live session like this, back interview style, but we do it where people can ask any questions they got, and it's a free open forum for members. We have a certified forms library. Other entities, I won't say their names, but they sell the forms. Well, the government has them for free. So we just downloaded them from free. We did put Trucking Wins logo on it, but we don't charge for them. It's free. It's basically a member-only community where we're trying to improve compliance for truckers nationwide. And we appreciate Camion for inviting us on this webinar today to help promote our product, your product, but even more so than that, providing the trucking community with information that, quite frankly, is hard to find.
Well, we all really appreciate that. So hopefully everyone took a screenshot of this. I'll leave it up for a second here. If you want to take a photo, make sure you visit the Trucking Wins website. He does have a lot of great YouTube videos as well. And as far as Camion, we're going to be at the Mid-America Trucking Show in March. Their 50th anniversary. I hear that it's going to be a great show. About 70,000 people are expected to attend, and we hope to see you there at our booth. Just check out the back cover of the directory program to find our booth number and information if you plan on attending. Are you guys going to be there by any chance, John?
My daughter is playing in a band contest or whatever at Orlando, Florida. And then right after that, her 3 friends are coming over to our place here in Florida. So I'm going to have to pass for family time, honestly.
Oh, totally understand. Totally understand. Well, thank you so much. And we will definitely be here again in April. Looking forward to it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and hope to see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.